Hey everyone, and welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the moderators for helping out today, the members of the channel, and everybody in the live chat. I so appreciate you being here. Today, I'm going to be talking with a former Scientologist. She has never shared her story before. She hasn't publicly spoken about this, and I think it's incredibly brave for her to be willing to do this and come forward. And I know that you guys will show her all kinds of aloha and kindness. If you have any questions as we go along, if you could put question in front of your question, I'll try and grab as many of those as we can, as we go, as we hear her story, as we gain a better understanding about how Scientology works, how they get people in, and the abuses that occur inside. And most importantly, how we can avoid that by recognizing the signs of a cult. So again, I want to thank all of you who are here and who are going to be coming in to show Ginger a ton of kindness. This is not an easy thing to do, especially to do it publicly. Like I said, I think it's a very brave thing to do. And I told her it's just going to be her and I talking. And of course, all of you here with us. So appreciate your alohas, your encouragement in the chat. We'll get to, like I said, as many questions as we can. I just really appreciate all of you being here. Without further ado here, I'll bring up Ginger and welcome her in. Ooh, we just
Hi, Natalie. Aloha, everyone in the chat.
Aloha, and I'm so glad that you're here. I think we got just a little bit of buffering on your video, but I bet it will clear up.
I hope so.
In just a minute there. I want to welcome you, Ginger, and thank you for coming forward. I know this is the first time that you're sharing your story in Scientology. And for our audience, Ginger and I actually met in Scientology here in the Twin Cities, where we were both Scientologists. And we recently reconnected. I think you ended up coming across my YouTube channel. And we immediately got on the phone.
Yes.
I love reconnecting people in that way, because I left Scientology from here in the Twin Cities about 15 years ago. So that would have been the length of time that you and I hadn't talked, and we were able to catch up and now share your story. Let's start out with how you got into Scientology.
Well, I met a wonderful, interesting man. I was dating him for a couple years, and he introduced me to Scientology. It was pretty gradual. Like he just shared some, little things of the tech here and there. So, and he was a chiropractor. Very successful and smart. So I really looked up to him. And I had used some of the things that he had pointed out to me. And yeah, it kind of went from there. I more took off though, after we broke up, interestingly. I had, that was the time that I could actually pursue what I thought was healing, a bigger purpose. There was a lot that I thought I was going to gain out of participating in Scientology. I saw a lot of people like him there, and I wanted to be like them. So,
Yeah, and he very much made it
so bad.
So I find it very interesting that you're dating him and that's how you get into Scientology, but then you break up and you end up becoming much more of an active Scientologist than even he was.
Yeah. Because I thought that was really the answer to fix things, problems that he had. I think as a Scientologist, you go around identifying everybody else's problems. And you just know how to fix them, and there's a lot of headiness in that. And I think I started out wanting healing, then completely went into I'll be a healer mode. And I don't think that was no, that wasn't really, unfortunately, that's not what I was. And I didn't get any of that out of it.
You became a Dianetics auditor, or what's called a Book One auditor. So you got trained to deliver Dianetics auditing as
Yeah.
a staff member for Scientology in the Twin Cities.
Yes, that's not what I initially signed up for. I initially, when I was asked to be on staff, I didn't want to be separate from my kids. So they wanted me in book sales. And that way I could just go to fairs and things with my kids. But that didn't last long before, you know, you get love bombed into this or that other position that they actually want you in. So,
You were told if you join staff, you can keep your children with you. You can go to like fairs where you're going to sell books, because it was very important. And you made it clear to them that I need to be with my kids. Like, I am the parent for my children. How old were your children at that time?
Oh my gosh. They were still in grade school. Maybe like 7 and 9.
Mm. So you start off that way where you're able to have your kids with you for a little while, and then they do what Scientology is famous for, which is like a bait and switch.
They
What
bait and
happens in
switch.
those situations?
Yeah. And it didn't seem at that time like that's what they were doing. Obviously, you wouldn't know if you didn't know that that's what they do. So, it just seemed kind of natural, like, oh, you would be great for this. And they tell you all the perks of it and basically just groom you into your agreement to that. At that point, I'd already signed a contract. And that also makes it a little harder. Yeah, it makes it harder to say no once you've already signed on, and they definitely are strict, or you know what I mean? They want what they want from a staff member.
Exactly. What was the expectation then when they wanted you to change jobs where you wouldn't be? So suddenly they're taking away being able to be with your children. What did they expect you were going to do with your kids, being that as a staff member, you're also not making any money and you're working full time?
They expected me to arrange babysitting, which was hard. And unfortunately, then as soon as my kids were old enough that the county wouldn't mind them being by themselves, then I was told that was fine.
So Scientology, or somebody from the org themselves said, hey, this is the legal age your kids can stay home. The county says
they were more concerned about that than
you should just leave them at home.
Yes. And also, hey, I'll take some responsibility. I believed that what I was going to be doing was going to be so helpful, and I was going to be, so much more successful. Like, I really put a lot into it. I really believed it, though. That's the thing. And so my focus was not as on my kids as it should have been.
Yeah. What was your experience like then when, you've made this transition now where you're having to pay babysitters or leave your kids home alone when you're not comfortable doing that? You're not making money at the org, but there's this expectation you got to get your kids covered. What was happening at that point? Is that when you started delivering Dianetics auditing for the org?
Yeah, while I was they put me in charge of like Div 6.
And Division 6, for people who don't know, that is the division in a Scientology organization that is in charge of selling all the books to new people, getting people in to sell books to, and deliver Scientology introductory services to. So they put you, a brand new person, barely knows about Scientology yourself, except for being a Dianetics auditor, over that entire.
I wasn't an auditor yet. I went from book sales to head of Div 6. Then it was my responsibility to make sure that we had a Dianetics auditor. So you get the progression of things that seems very natural. This is now my responsibility to provide a Dianetics auditor for the division that I'm responsible for. So if there's no auditor available, guess who needs to be the auditor?
Mm-hmm.
No, I was interested in learning how to audit. I wanted to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was excited about that part of it. But before I had joined staff, of course, I was promised that I would get auditing. That's one of the big things that they promised you. You'll get your bridge. I didn't have money to buy the treatments,
Mm-hmm.
and so of course that's how they got me. I needed help, and I didn't have the money to pay for the bridge, so I was going to do it that way. Well, all of the courses and everything that I got was training me for my position. It wasn't for my
For
healing at
yourself.
all.
Did you
No,
sign a 2.5-year contract or a 5-year contract when you were a
two
staff
and
member?
a half, two and a
The
half.
2.5. Okay.
Yes.
So you're getting trained to be a Dynetics auditor, but you're not getting a lot of auditing yourself or the things that you were looking for to get help for yourself. What was your experience like as a staff member? Was any of it surprising to you?
Well, yeah. So I think as a staff member, I think I just was really, you were talking about with a guest the other day about hypnosis and everything, and you do hypnotize yourself. There's no case on post, so you just put everything off, and you're not thinking about your problems, and you're definitely not talking about your problems, because that could just be more problems. So
So you're not
it just,
allowed. Yeah. Like
no,
you're
so you just put it all off. All my stuff had to go off.
yeah.
You're not going to interpolate anything at the org with your problems. I got really good at ignoring my problems. Unfortunately, I think that what happened, there were little things that woke me up, but they were things that I thought were wrong. They were wrongs committed on other people, mostly. Like, I didn't like seeing people getting second mortgages to build an ideal org, when as a staff member, I knew how hard it was to get anybody to join staff. I just really, I didn't believe in the ideal org thing that much.
Mm-hmm. And the
I
ideal
really was like, how is this going to work? We're sitting here having a hard time. Plus, they tell you to fudge numbers, basically.
Well, what do you mean by when you say fudge numbers? Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, you take pictures of things so that it looks like more people were at your event, and everything's driven by statistics. So it's just, I don't know about fudging numbers, but it's all about the numbers.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
all
about the people at all. It's all about how many times do I have to call this person until they answer, until they listen to me long enough to come in, till I talk to them long enough once they're here to get them to do a service.
Mm-hmm.
And
what was your
told
experience?
to totally ignore people's real life problems, that they're telling you that they can't do this, and you're supposed to freaking just overcome that for them mentally with mental gymnastics, just not being in reality. And those things just were problems for me. Conflict, with my own personal integrity. There were things that were conflicting with my own personal integrity that I think just, yeah. And then it just eventually came to a head, with a lot of different things kind of piled up.
So you're
As my contract was coming to an end, and I wanted to be with my kids, I started voicing that, and I was told that I couldn't leave my post until I had found and trained my replacement. So now I had just been through all the training. That's a long time.
Yeah. So you finish your 2.5-year contract, but you're saying they wouldn't let you leave.
I know. And I'm like, this is how I'm like, wow, you really were brainwashed, because I could have just freaking left. I could have just left. I could have just been like, okay, bye. But I didn't.
That is
obligated to the group. I really felt I think people who have trauma in their life want to be part of something. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I think that's an avenue that Scientology can definitely exploit to get people on staff. And those are the people. It's not the upstat people that join staff. I don't know if you've noticed that, but
Yeah, they definitely go after people who are newer or who have a desire to do Scientology, but they don't have the funds for it, and go, "Well, here's a way that you can do it. You can contribute to clearing the planet, and then you yourself can receive all of this help." It sounds like not only did that not happen for you, but they actually added on to your problems by trying to separate you from your children. Um, when you were doing
yeah, because those problems endured after I left. You know, those problems endure to this day. We're only just beginning to scratch the surface. Like, I didn't even look at anything Scientology for years, good or bad, after deciding I was done with it. So just to give myself space, like, I needed to not use that terminology. I needed to not think like that. I needed to find another way, which it took me a long time to get to therapy, thanks to Scientology. So, therapy for myself or my kids.
Yeah, that's a long road to walk, and I'm glad that you got there. When you were auditing people on Dianetics in the org there, what was your experience like?
Well,
because you would just audit whoever came in.
Yeah, I liked the people that I audited. I liked so many people that I met in Scientology. So many people. There are so many really wonderful people. It's sad. It breaks my heart. But yeah, I would just, I mostly just stuck to really basic introductory processes with people and didn't go deep into their trauma. I wasn't a really highly trained or skilled auditor. I hoped that I was helping people. I thought that I was maybe helping people, but I don't think I really saw that.
Yeah, because you were given, you're basically selling to people that, well, actually, Dianetic Scientology can help you with that trauma. And the only training you have is like with the book Dianetics, and now you're expected to be this auditor. Scientology likes to call it their version of counselor for these people. Did you ever, what was it like kind of going through this process of auditing too, with like people you didn't know and strangers? Because you do go into a room alone with a stranger to do this Dianetics process.
Mostly was fine. I mean, I was nervous initially. I really cared about the people, so I didn't want to mess anything up. And I believed in the process. I had been through it myself. I'd had some experiences with Dianetics, personally. So, most of those experiences weren't bad.
Were you ever made
tired at the end of the day, though? I'd be so tired at the end of the day from being there. But I did have one guy that was really legit, just paying to be in the room to think and say lustful things about me to me. Yes, and they wanted me to keep auditing him. I was asking my supervisor to find somebody else to audit him. There was no way I would ever be able to help him because he couldn't. Come on. And it was awkward, but and they didn't. I that was one thing that kind of, I was like, yeah, there were like drops in a bucket, and until it was just like, oh, okay, that's too much.
Yeah. So they kept, when you went to a superior and you said, and if you're comfortable sharing it, what is it that he was doing? You said he was literally saying to you things that
he'd like to come across the room and touch me, like feel my legs. that he only was there, like he was perfectly happy to pay the $200 just to sit in the same room with me. I mean, he just said that right out.
And be able
How
to
am
say
I supposed
things.
to like get him to go into any kind of, he wasn't there for that.
And when
He
you told
needed totally different help than I could give him. So I insisted that they find him a grandma or a man to audit him, somebody that he didn't find attractive.
and they made you audit him beyond that.
I think
Like
maybe
when,
one or two sessions that were beyond the point where I had said like this is a problem. But no, at some point I just said I'm not going to do it. Like he needs somebody else. At a certain point, you know, that could have been written up. I could have started an ethics cycle about that. Not that it would have mattered. I would have been to blame or something, but you know how
yeah,
it is.
because and you're telling them, you're saying, hey, this is making me uncomfortable. I'm going into a closed lock room with this man who has made it very clear that he's paying $200 so we can speak to me in a sexual way.
So dirty. Like I really did. I was like, now I had already known, I realized that like I was being used for my looks as a Div 6 person because it was openly stated to me
In
that
what way?
they found me attractive. They wanted attractive people meeting the public. They thought that that would bring more people in. So like, you know, so on one hand, I should be as attractive as possible. But on the other hand, I did have some jealousy things happening from other women in the group that didn't like how I dressed or that how I wore my makeup or anything that was fine. So there were some, I got called into ethics over that, over like, I guess, reports being written about people not like, I don't know because at that time the ethics officer basically just laughed. She's told me that it was jealousy and
So
not
on one
serious.
hand, your superiors are telling you to sexy it up, that like, you know, make yourself attractive because you can get people into Scientology that way. And at the same time, you've got people in the organization being critical of you because you're attractive. And like you said, there was some jealousy going on. I do recall, I remember.
It was a damned if I do, damned if I don't kind of situation, you
Yeah.
know. It was, you know, and that's fine. I probably could have used some fashion tips.
Well, no, I mean,
Okay, so there was a time, I will confess this. This would have been nice rather than getting picked on. So it was hotter than hell. There was no AC, there was no heat in that building. So you had to, like, whatever the weather was, you had to be prepared. And so when it was really hot, I would wear sundresses and things or loose clothing, not realizing that when I bent down, you could see down my front. Now, if somebody had just said, oh my gosh, Ginger, do you know you can see right to your underwear if you bend down? If somebody had said that to me, I would have been like, you know, I would have fixed it. But instead, it was ethics chits. It was weird things like I didn't even realize it until somebody came and leaned on my desk with a loose shirt showing me her full tits. No bra.
to make
And
a
then
point.
I was like, oh. It was one day, that was how I put it together. Now, like, apparently I'm just really not the brightest. I was trying to stay comfortable in a really hot situation. I did not know that. If somebody had pointed it out to me, I would have been really embarrassed. And I was embarrassed when I realized it. But I realized that I did not have friends there. I had enemies. Like a friend would have said, I just saw your boobs. You know, like, and covered you, you know, as a friend. I was not, yeah. So that let me know I wasn't in the right place. That's okay. I'm actually grateful for that. I'm grateful for every person that did hurtful things that made it easy to leave, because there were a lot of wonderful people there. And I really did believe I was helping. I really did believe I was going to get help. I believed I was a better person.
Mm-hmm. When you were during your time on staff, then did you find that, because one thing that's very common in a Scientology organization, and I want to make sure the audience understands, we are not talking about the C word. We're talking about Scientology staff and what they call a class 5 organization. So the rules of the C organization, like no premarital sex, keeping it vanilla, those aren't supposed to apply in an organization like this.
I had no idea about those rules.
But your dating life became fodder, and you got the attention of executives at that organization.
By
You were a single woman dating.
Yes. Only because I dated within the group. I think if I had not been dating somebody who was a senior, it wouldn't have been a problem.
So you were dating
and somebody. I didn't date him for long. It was a few dates, but a big deal was made out of it. A big deal was made out of it. That was a big embarrassing, but it was another opportunity for me to discover what I was really involved in.
Yeah. So, what ended up happening? So you're dating somebody who at the time was one of the most senior trained technical.
Oh yeah, everybody loved this guy. Like he practically walked on water at the org. So like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only girl who had kind of a crush on this guy. He had a lot of charisma.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, people get hyped up. So yeah, I'd had a crush on him for a while, but I never did anything. And he asked me out. We went out on a couple dates. And because I'd been crushing on him for a long time, I think I was willing, you know, we made out. I didn't think anything of it. Like, and he let me know, I don't know, about a week later or whatever, he was seeing somebody else. It was really not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
I've been single for a long time. Like, you know, big deal.
Yeah, people date. That's what happens when you're dating.
Yeah, that's what you're dating for, right? So to find out. So yeah, we dated, we found out. I moved on. The next thing I know, I'm being dragged into ethics. My senior had a problem with the fact that he was dating me and somebody else at the same time and blah, blah, blah. Stuff I never had a problem with. Didn't think anything about it. And I'm like,
because you were just casually dating, like dating people to see if there's somebody you want to get serious with.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Like I never had talked to the guy outside of Scientology in any way. So yeah, it's dating.
Yeah. And you're cool with it. You're like, whatever, I moved on, but you get dragged into ethics over this
because
to get in your business.
Yeah, I never complained, but apparently my senior complained for me on my behalf that this guy did something wrong. I didn't see anything wrong. It blew me away.
Yeah,
I ended up having to go and tell the ethics officer, a different ethics officer, one who happened to also, I believe, have a crush on that same guy.
Oh, I guarantee it. I can tell you, I have firsthand knowledge. And let's keep the name.
She wanted all the details.
So she and this person, and her name is Karen. So this person was over ethics for the organization, and she used her power. So, and I want to make sure the audience has this straight. So here we have Ginger casually dating one of the male staff members. Both of them are single. Both of them are dating. He's dating other people, as people do when you're casually dating. You get pulled into ethics, and there's a woman named Karen who wants to know all the gory details of what you did with this guy, what your relationship was. And it turns out Karen herself had been crushing on this guy for a long time. And I can verify this because she told me.
Yeah, I knew it too.
Me.
I knew it too.
So What is it? What did she say, and what was her whole angle with this?
Well, she wanted all the details, which was very, very awkward.
She wanted to know, like, how long did you make out with him?
I, you know what? I think my trauma brain blocked it out.
Mhm.
I did not want to tell her anything.
Yeah, nor should you have had to. Most importantly, remember, audience, we're talking about two single people, not in the Sea Organization. But this woman who had her own bone to pick because she had a crush on him, she wants you to just download. And then did she intend to get him in trouble because he was rejecting her? Also, this was happening at the same time. He
Well,
was
that's why I
not
thought it was
wanting,
okay to date him. If he
yeah.
wanted to date her, he would, right? Like that's how dating works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you don't always get picked. I haven't always been picked. That's okay. It's okay.
But instead of just letting that go, this staff member, who, by the way, today works for the Office of Special Affairs in the Sea Org. Did you know that?
Oh, is she one of those listener inners? I hate those people.
Now, maybe
That's so
she,
psycho to like.
yeah, maybe
It
she,
really is like, oh my God. Okay, here's the thing that I think was the worst. Okay. Up until that point, I'm thinking, okay, I guess this is what Scientology does. This is weird and I don't like it, but I guess this is what I have to do. What she did, though, was bring it up outside of the ethics office by saying mocking things to me about my dating style right in the public. She and I would know. Now, I've since learned that abusers use those kinds of tactics. Like, and I did know it was abusive at the time that she was doing it. But her being the ethics officer, who do I complain to? And I'm already wanting out. I'm already wanting out so bad I can taste it. So,
yeah. And she was an equivalent of like what would be considered HR. Karen was over the Scientology equivalent of HR. So imagine, everybody, at your place of work, you've got HR up your butt asking details about your dating life. And then you find out this person has a massive crush on the guy, and she's just got her own angle of what she's trying to do. This is also the same person who, I don't know if you know this, Ginger, but when my daughter Shelby, after leaving Scientology, she met up with a friend at the New Ideal Org in St. Paul because her friend wanted to do a tour. And even though we had left Scientology and Shelby had been declared a suppressive person by then, she thought, sure, I'll go with you. And she went with her and she was talking to people in the lobby who were thrilled to see her because Scientology doesn't tell everybody when you leave. And she was then escorted out. And while she was leaving, she ran into Chris. Chris, I forget his last name, but you probably remember Chris. He was a staff member as well. And Karen was coming down the street towards the org. And you know how there's the big steps at the new org in St. Paul?
yeah.
And Shelby was on the steps with Chris. And Chris was like, hey, Shelby. It was all very happy. Shelby wasn't in there telling people to leave Scientology. She wasn't in there saying anything about Xenu. She just wanted her friend to see the building. This was, of what was once a part of her life.
Yeah.
Karen comes
it's
up.
It's a public place.
It's a public place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen comes up screaming, Shelby, or screaming, Chris, get away from her. Get away from her, like some psycho. Meanwhile, my daughter's friend, who's never been in Scientology and was curious, was getting an earful and eyeful of how they operate. So this individual specifically, who later on went and joined the Sea Organization, and we heard she was in the Office of Special Affairs. I don't know if she's still there. Definitely cut and made for that type of work.
Definitely kind of a Machiavellian character. She also worked for the school that I sent my daughter to. So my kids had problems. We've since found out that we're all on the spectrum. We're neurodivergent. And at that time, just my youngest son had been diagnosed at school with Asperger's, but my daughter also had a lot of problems at school, and she was accepted into Flagship Academy. Interestingly, my Asperger's son could not be audited and could not be accepted into Flagship Academy.
And Flagship Academy was a Scientology school that this
Yeah.
same woman, Karen, also worked at.
Yes,
So
that
she's
psycho. Yes, the same psycho was with children all day in her day job. So, and with my child.
With your children,
Yes,
specifically.
one of them. Yeah.
Mhm.
I worked for the after school. I did after school care for the Flagship Academy in order to pay. Covered half of the tuition for my daughter to go to a private school. She'd been abused at school, in public school, previously. So it was really important to me to get her away from being abused. And then lo and behold, she was all day with a horribly abusive person. Karen needs help for sure.
Yeah, no,
That she's not getting, unfortunately, and just to be, able to go and wield your authority, your pseudo authority, really, and unfortunately, like, I think kids don't always tell you everything because they don't know what's normal and what's not normal. So, it was more finding out after everything's over and, everybody's grown up and you start talking about it and then find out about horrible things that Karen was doing with the kids at school.
What was she doing with the kids at school?
Well, she was horribly abusive. Like, she would give them all denigrating nicknames. Like, if they screwed up on something, like, they would get tagged with this nickname that would always refer back to, something humiliating.
And she was a teacher?
Which is what she did at the org with me too, because after going in and talking about what happened with the senior CS, her whole thing was to tag me with a humiliation anytime she wanted to push that button. That's sick.
Yeah, very much so, especially when you were not doing anything wrong. Did he?
No, I mean, I really was. I mean, if I was, I didn't know it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my best. I had the best intentions of being there. But no, she just didn't like me.
Yeah, or your children. So the same person.
Or probably anybody.
Yeah. She's being abusive within the organization itself, using her power to abuse people, including you. And then she's working in a Scientology school and is doing the same thing, including giving kids degrading nicknames.
Yes. I know it wasn't just my daughter, because my daughter told me it was all the kids. There was no, there was the maybe kind of a pet, but anybody was a target.
Wow. Just so much hate in her heart. Just so
people
much.
Used to praise her for what kind of control she had over the kids. Now you understand it. That's what's crazy.
Mm-hmm. What do you think was really happening? How did she get that control over the kids?
I think that they felt like they had no choice but to obey.
Mm-hmm. Because not only is she the teacher in the school, in Scientology, she's the person they would have to see if they get in trouble in Scientology.
And they probably feel hopeless, like that. How their parent just praises Karen all the time. Karen was like the bee's knees. Everybody loved Karen. Mm-hmm. Why would a child think that they would be believed? Or why would they think that they weren't going to be brought into an ethics cycle? What did you do to Karen? Why are you complaining about Karen? Da, 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 da.
Exactly. Being too afraid to come forward and too afraid to, just be able to say.
Yes, be as good as they can be to not become a target, right? So,
Yeah. That's what she said. Her last name's Wessling, or it was then anyways, Karen Wessling. This was over 15 years ago, because this is when I had still been in Scientology, and then I left. Do you remember when I left, when my husband and I left Scientology?
It was not that long before I did, actually. So, like, in a way, I remember you leaving, and I remember being forbidden to be in contact with you and wondering, what the heck happened, and also having my own things, going on in my own mind, my own conflicts and things at that time. Thank you for it being possible, like, to just go and be done.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be public because I didn't want retaliation, as you know, there can be. So,
Mm-hmm. What for you when you were there? What for you is like the final straw? I feel like we all kind of have. For most of us, I feel like it tends to build, because they're so good at handling us and gaslighting us into believing that what we saw and what we knew to happen didn't actually occur, that we were the ones who were the problem. How did you finally get to that point where you were like, no, I'm not doing this anymore?
Well, it was a series of events. Like, so I said that I had been required to stay beyond my contract unless my position was filled, which was a real conundrum for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the same time, huh?
You're unpaid. You have to
Yes.
sign a 2.5-year contract to be a volunteer in Scientology. They
Yes.
don't have to pay you, but you have to attend 3 roll calls a day. Your
Yeah.
2.5-year contract is up, and they're telling you, no, Ginger, you have to keep working for us
Until my position is covered, until I have found and trained my replacement, which seemed like impossible to me. What happened was my daughter started having problems at school, and she was still in the Scientology school. And beyond that, it was found that she was doing self-harm. And at that point, I think Karen, in her vigor to get rid of me, she kicked me off staff.
Right about that time.
I got my little pink slip, or whatever you call it, and I was dismissed. And I got to go home and be with my kids and try to figure out what to do next. Now, I didn't know what to do next, unfortunately. But I did have some time away, and it was good for me. I had not had a break. I'd been working 7 days a week, 60+ hour weeks for years. Well, not all for free. I had my own business. I had the after school care for the flagship academy. And then on weekends, I had, a minimum of 20 hours for the org.
Yeah. I mean,
that's how I had to manage my life, because I was a single mom too. Keep that in mind. Like, but you can do it. You're superhuman. The tech. Just fucking forget about yourself and do whatever we say. Yeah. So anyway, I got out by that. And then they kept building the org, and they wanted to, I went to the grand opening event or something. So at that point, they started trying to get me to come back on staff. Not only me, but also my daughter. My daughter, who I was dismissed from staff because she was self-harming. My daughter with mental health issues that I don't know how to help her with. They'll fix that if we just join staff. And they work you so hard. I came this close. I got the clothes and everything, went and got fitted, and found out that while they were telling me one thing, that my daughter really wanted to join staff and we needed to figure out these logistics. They wanted her to go live with another family. They'll overcome any objection that you have, even to the point of your child can go live with another family if that's easier. And I'm just like, my daughter comes in. This is right after they'd been talking. I had one talking to me and she had one talking to her in my home. And after they left, she came in and she says, like, I don't want to do this. And I said, they've been telling me that you do.
So they had you separated. So Scientology recruiters came to your house.
Yes.
And they separated you and your daughter, and they're coming over and telling you, oh, she totally wants to join staff. And they've got your daughter, your minor child, separate in another room, saying that
she wants to, but she's just worried about this. She wants to, but there's just that little thing. Mm-hmm. Like, it was worded in that way. So it took her coming to me and saying she didn't want to. And I was like, I don't think I want to either. I definitely don't want to, now that I know, now that I can really 100% clearly see what kind of manipulation you've been doing. So the next time they showed up, they got all their stuff back and they were told not to come back.
Wow. Do you remember who those recruiters were? Were they staff members or Sea Org members?
They were Sea Org. They were Sea Org.
Male, female.
But Chris Sheldon was one who was working me too, and I've since bought his book. I've seen him on YouTube. So, like, yeah.
He was trying to get you to join staff again.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from that.
They were so sure that I didn't want to join staff because I had some kind of overts and stuff. They were like putting me on the meter and everything. I was like, no, really, I just really don't want to. I just really am happier not. I just really do want you to go fuck yourselves. Yeah. Like, come on.
It's so fascinating, that part about Scientology where that is so true, right, Ginger? You can't possibly be having your own thoughts and feelings.
That's why I told him, isn't that the end phenomena? Is a fully self-determined being? Well, I'm being self-determined. I think we're good. We're good. Learned a lot. I did. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about cults. Mm-hmm. I've learned a lot about myself since then. But after listening to your guest the other day, who was talking about how long it can take to recover from Scientology specifically, I think that it definitely should be looked at more in context of, we had talked about previous to this, the current health issues that I have and how trauma affects that. And like, I guess I wouldn't have thought of my experience in Scientology as traumatic until I learned that, like, how abusive it actually is. So like, I didn't get to see the abuse that Sea Org members go through. And like, thank God my kids weren't taken off into Sea Org. There was a point in time where I would have thought that was totally okay. I don't know about that though. I have always had this, like, I didn't want anybody to take my kids away from me. Like, I really had a big thing on that. I took myself away from my kids, unfortunately. I can't get that time back. I do hope though that if I share my story, maybe people can avoid making that mistake. Mm-hmm. Or maybe people who are recovering after getting out will go seek some help sooner. Because the other thing is, once you're out, like there is a legitimate fear of getting any kind of help through therapy. And my daughter needed help. And I was afraid to take her to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I was afraid that she would be abused. And I still feel like that though too. I still feel like that. I still feel wary. I don't think there's anything wrong with being wary. Mm-hmm. But
you've sought therapy.
Really avoided the subject and just went, and I did not deal well with it. I did not deal with it well, I should say. Yeah. I kind of went off the deep end a little bit for a while. I really did.
Mm-hmm. And then, but you were later on, you did end up getting starting therapy with for
Yes.
yourself and then with your daughter. And that's an insidious part about it too, where in Scientology, they do such a bang up job of making people so afraid to get legitimate help. You become
Yes.
so terrified that psychiatrists are going to take your children and drug them and you'll lose custody and all these extreme situations, so much
Yeah.
so too.
And as a single parent, it's extra
Yeah.
terrifying, right? So you're like, it's you against the world, basically. That's the perspective I had,
Mhm.
and that was my motivation for wanting to be the best that I could be, was say, safeguarding my kids. Unfortunately, I went to, the absolute worst place to go to safeguard your kids. I took, I do regret that, but yeah, I would encourage people to find therapy or something that works for them, especially if you're getting out of Scientology. Don't be afraid. You're not gonna like burst into flames or anything if you go see a therapist.
Yep, a lot of people find it very helpful. Gnome Sane has a question. I'm going to grab some questions. Were either of you mean to each other while in? No, I would definitely say no. I only ever had, I mean, positive interactions with you.
Same.
I remember it, but you speak for yourself.
I've always liked you and admired you. I thought you were so cool. No, like, I mean, well, I even came over and worked for you. I cleaned your home. No, we
Mhm.
were very good friends all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Do
Yeah.
you re-
There's
do
a
you
lot of
re-
great people in Scientology, unfortunately.
do you remember what they told you when my husband at the time and I left? Do you recall at all what the line was they were telling people?
It was very hush hush.
Mhm.
I think it was more like you had gotten in touch with Anonymous somehow, and basically, yeah, they tell you as little as possible, and then they forbid you to look at anything.
Mhm.
You cannot look at anything anti-Scientology without it becoming an ethics cycle. And this is how brainwashed I was, that it took 2 or 3 years before I went online and looked at anything like that Leah Remini's done, any former Scientology. It took years before I would even look.
Wow. What
And
was
it
that like
wasn't
for you?
because I was afraid that something bad would happen. I just didn't want to look at it. Like, I didn't care. I wanted to not even care. I think I wanted it to just not have ever even happened.
Mhm.
Um,
What was it like for you when you first started actually getting online and realizing that you weren't alone in your experience, that it was unfortunately kind of commonplace in what can happen in Scientology? What was it like for you to first start reading those things?
it was horrifying. And it was, I have to say, I mean, I really do feel a lot of shame for, like, that's the thing. Like, you realize, oh, if I had just looked, if I had just taken a little clickety clickety gander. But I mean, I had to ask myself too, would I have believed it? Would I have believed whatever, they would have pulled me into some ethics cycle that would have just drilled it into my mind that this was, black propaganda or whatever.
Mhm.
Um,
It
so
really speaks to how strong the control is and the mind control and the brainwashing, but the self-imposed brainwashing and mind control that
you don't even
remains
know
even
this. Yes.
exactly. Even when you leave Scientology, you are free and clear of Scientology and still terrified to look at anything on the internet or go to therapy. And that went on for years. So when we talk about the damage that Scientology does, it's not just happening while you're there, it can
No.
occur even once you've left because the brainwashing doesn't allow you to reach out for valid forms of therapy and help or to look.
Yes.
It's so strong. What did it feel
Yes.
like to be able to just break that?
Well, I am right now. Today's the day.
That's true, because it's the first time you've been
So
public
how
about
does
it.
it feel? I mean, I I don't know how I feel yet. I feel good about it because I really do hope that people will get real help for themselves. I know that like what got me into Scientology, I had real life problems. I was looking for real solutions. I thought I found them. I did. I mean, I there were things about the tech that, helped me turn things around. I didn't know where to find those resources anywhere else. Um, I just think there are so many good people out there looking for help, and I don't want them to go to Scientology. I have said in my personal life, anybody, if it ever comes up, don't never give them your number, don't give them your address. They do not obey when you, like, if you say take me off your list, like you have to make threats till they'll leave you alone.
Mhm.
That's absolutely wrong. I mean, that seems like such a small thing, but that is breaking a boundary. They do not care about your personal boundaries at all. So, like, it is abusive from the smallest little thing, like not caring when you say take my number off your list. That's abusive. People need to understand that that's abusive. Go get some real help. Your therapist's not going to do that.
Yeah. That is very true. This is a great question from Danielle Chamberlain. And Danielle, I saw your recent interview. I've been wanting to get a hold of you. If you're still here, can you email me, Natalie at lifeafteraccult.com? Because I would love to chat with you. Danielle Chamberlain, I think this is the same person that I'm thinking of. Question for Ginger. How long was it before you were able to talk to your non Scientology friends about you having been a Scientologist?
I don't talk about it very much at all. I don't. Like, I have been, like, I had friends post Scientology. I was hanging out with friends and stuff, but they call me a freak because I really was. I was in between. I still had the lingo. I still had, the whole ideology going on. I still thought I could touch people and help them heal. Like, I was a freak. And I continued being a freak too. I had to freak on for a while longer until I ran out of it. I guess, I don't know, but that was me. That was me, how I handled it. And I really, I think I'm more introverted than anything else, and probably it might have helped to talk to other people.
Yeah, and you still can. I mean, you're taking such a
I am
huge
now.
day.
So that's how many years? We're talking
Yeah.
like, it was what, 20, I think 2010.
Yeah, I left in 2010.
So yeah, I think 2010 is when, like, the whole thing where I was told I had to leave, and then you get whiplash just talking about it, just trying to tell the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it took a long time. I wish
Yeah.
I had done it sooner. I recommend finding friends or somebody that you can talk to. I think that if you've survived a cult, that, yeah, there's some definite, like, maybe you don't want people to know that you got involved in that, because I think people think that you're dumb or something for that, but you're not. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know how many IQ tests I took, but my IQ test didn't say I was dumb. And I also saw a lot of really successful people that were there. But
Mhm.
for some reason, I feel dumb forever falling for it. And I hope that I can get over that and be, I'm working on getting over that by talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree completely. I think it's something where I've talked to a lot of people outside of Scientology and even people who, are familiar with many of us, and a common thing. It's like, wow, like a lot of you seem really smart. Like, how'd that happen? Well, a lot of us were born into it. But even
Right.
then, Scientology hijacks. They look for the people who want to help. They look for the vulnerable. You were a single mom. you had past trauma that you wanted to deal with, and they presented Dianetics and Scientology as
Yeah.
a solution and way of doing that. You wanted to help your children. They told
Maybe
you this is
nobody's ever told you that they think you're amazing. What a wonderful person you are. Wow, you are so theta. Oh my God. I'm blown away. Like the love bombing, they do, like, yeah, it's abusive relationship from start to finish. They groom you, they love bomb you, they make you feel good. If they weren't making you feel good to start with, you would never even get going in there.
Yeah.
Like, you come in, you got your insecurities. They know you got your insecurities, but they also know that you are an amazing being.
Mm-hmm.
And you got your shit together. Look at you. Look at you. Number one auditor. Number one Dianetics auditor 2 years in a row. Guess what? I was the only auditor. That's how I was number one. But I wasn't allowed to say that in order to try to get people to join me. No, because that would look bad. I'm just like, oh my God. Yeah, we're going to fill this big building with so many auditors. We're making people go into debt. Like, so my personal integrity could not abide with that. Like, that was where I'm like, there were a lot of things that I saw that I did not want to be part of. I never want to be part of again. I don't recommend it for people. You can get help without having to sacrifice your children, your friendships, your interests, your own personal interests. I like to do art. If I was still in Scientology, I would not have time to do art ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's totally true. No Sane has another question. How much yelling, swearing happened over statistics and money while you were on staff?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Yelling and swearing over. I heard things. I didn't get yelled at, fortunately, that I recall. I don't recall getting yelled at. But I do know that, like, yes, there was a huge amount of pressure to meet statistics. Huge. You'd be sweating bullets, pit in your stomach all the time, because a lot of the times the statistics were not really, I mean, they weren't realistic for what size group we had to pull from.
Yeah. Yeah, they were always in denial about that. I mean, they are by building these giant ideal organizations, and there's like nobody to fill it.
And the street traffic coming in is not like they say. And so, I mean, they teach you about PR. They teach you about PR and how to do PR. They teach you to film things a certain way and all that stuff. And like, so I eventually like got to the point where when going to the ideal org and they did the big, IAS event or whatever event that they're doing on the big screen, I've figured out by this point that they're just, it's all cut and put together in a specific way to hype you up. It doesn't even have to be real. I remember looking and I was there, and I remember just having the realization that, like, this isn't even real.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've just watched. Like, I just watched how many people showed up for the fundraising event at our org, and watched what, how everything was made to make it look a certain way for such an event as this to be on a screen like that. So, like, I knew the reality behind the scenes. Everybody knew that, but everybody's just plugging along in a delusion.
And nobody says anything. I'm going to pull up a couple comments.
You'll be in trouble.
That's right. Exactly. Yes. LJ says, yeah, you just stay quiet. LJ says, Ginger, my dear, you were wise beyond your years. You escaped. You got out.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. Thank you. I wish.
Jess Jess LaBarber says, thanks for speaking up, Ginger. And Gnome Sane wants to know, was staff muster any less intense than Sea Org muster? So when you guys would do roll call and stuff for staff, I mean, Ginger wasn't in the Sea organization, so I'm not sure she'd have
Yeah, I don't know. I think Sea Org is far rougher.
Yeah, the musters, I would say,
because they mostly have gotten young people, and yeah, I think probably Sea Org is made of a lot of people like Karen.
Yeah, that's very true. And if you're not like that, they want to make you
like that. Yeah. That's why she was praised.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. Like, I saw people getting praised, or I saw people who were, OTA, but I was like, I don't like you. Like, you do things I would not do. Okay, so now I'm starting to put it together. This is just a piece of blue sky. That's what it is.
Exactly. That's so true.
Yeah.
How old were you when you joined Scientology?
I was in my later 30s. So I think 37, 38.
Mm-hmm. And you were in for how long?
I was on staff for 3 years. So not that long, really. Not that long. Long enough.
Yeah. Crazy the impact, though, that it had on your life.
Yeah, long term.
Mm-hmm. Still today.
Yeah.
Danielle says, Ginger, the more I speak out, the stronger I feel, as there's enormous support in this community. So Danielle's a former Scientologist as well.
Thank you, Danielle. That's so nice. Thank you so much.
The Virgin Monkey says, it's amazing to hear about mothers who actually protect and stand up for their children. Thank you for sharing.
I wish I had done a better job and done it sooner. I at this point, my kids are grown now, so they didn't get help when they needed it. We're all getting help now. The main thing is I want people to not make the same mistake that I made, to get help sooner, and to get the right kind of help. Now there are so many resources for if you have a child with autism or ADHD, like that's in my family. I would have totally denied it. When I was in Scientology, I didn't want to label my kids. I wanted, I believed in, I guess that somehow spiritually they would overcome these things, which is so unrealistic. But there is really great help now, because there are people out here talking about their real life experiences with autism or with trauma, or, whatever the things are that real people actually struggle with in real life. There's so many more resources now. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go to Scientology. You don't have to spend a ton of money. And like Danielle said, there's community too. So we never had that before we had this technology. So talk about the technology that could like really help humanity. I think it's our phone, or it's our laptop. It's the ways that we connect with other people who have shared experiences. We can support each other. We can find resources. And I really, I think that's why it's important to me to say something, because I would rather people go to resources where they could actually get help.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, if you're not being helped, move on.
Yes.
Say goodbye. You could just find a different therapist, find a different group, like whatever. Find a hobby. Sometimes just finding a hobby.
Yeah. Mark Hardman says reconnection is so much better than disconnection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Although I do agree that sometimes you need to disconnect. with abusers. So I'd like to be disconnected from Scientology. I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah. Fox Ginger, so brave to explain about your parenting. Sorry you went through this.
Thank you.
Cooler by the Lake says, so happy you're telling your story. You couldn't have picked a safer place. Aww.
I think so too. I think so too. When I saw Natalie, I was like, oh, there we go. I would not be doing this if it weren't for you, Natalie, because I know you, because I have a warm place in my heart for you. I always have. I wondered what happened to you. Like, we lost touch because of that. And why didn't I reach out and all this time? I think I really did want to just pretend like it never happened.
I totally get it. I 100% get it. And I'm so glad too that we were able to reconnect. I think it was really meant to be, to do it now, especially, I've been on YouTube for a year now and have been sharing other people's stories of leaving their cult, primarily Scientology, but other ones as well. And it's such a great time, I think, for people to be able to, it's such a big step too. Like, I think most people who watch my channel, I think, can understand and appreciate what a big deal it is. It is one thing to leave Scientology. It is something completely different to speak about it publicly, because that was the worst thing you could do.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, well, I mean, and then once I did start looking into Scientology, post Scientology, and find out about gang stalking and different things that they can do to former members who speak out, that definitely, my kids were still home. I didn't want anything to do with any of that. So, unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if that's still going on. It probably is, gang stalking and things that they do to people.
You mean kind of like the way they would just show up and
harass you, or
Oh, it totally is. When I left, 2 Sea Org members flew out to Minnesota to have a meeting with me at the Hilton over by the airport. And I had already left. I'd said I was leaving. I'd already, in their words, kidnapped my own daughter from Scientology.
Oh, that's crazy. I don't know if you're insane without saying you're insane.
I know, I kidnapped my own daughter, is what they said. But because, Ginger, you might remember, Shelby was training at Flag to be a staff member.
I do remember. Yes.
So for me to leave, I had a whole plan. It took me 2 years to get her back physically, and then get her set up with my former husband. They went to Mexico, and Karen Wessling tracked her down and tried to convince her to move out of her family. This is the same person we're talking about who did, who interfered in Ginger's life as well, and tried to get Shelby to move out so that she could remain a Scientologist, because Shelby was 19, 18 at this point and could legally do so. And that's when I had to get really serious about pushing back on Scientology.
Yeah, before they really got your child.
Oh, totally. And what Karen didn't understand, she really didn't understand, I think, who she was dealing with, because I wasn't just your average Scientologist. I'd been raised in Scientology. I had been in the Sea Organization. I read the manual.
Every side of it. Yeah.
Totally. I know every side of it. So for her to think that she could pull something over on me or try and intimidate somebody in my family into doing something, and not think that I wasn't going to rise up and rain down holy hell on her and Scientology. I mean, she learned.
Did
she messed around? She found out. Oh, she totally learned. Yeah, no,
I wouldn't know any of that. I missed out on all of that. That's the juicy good stuff. You'll have to
that's right. No one got to know. But basically what worked for me was taking my understanding of Scientology and how the Sea Org works and the rules, and having a pretty good understanding of how the Office of Special Affairs operates. And I used their own rules against them. So I went a different route in how, when I was leaving, because I knew that if I pushed this button right here, they would have no choice but to back off from me. And it's like, this is the thing, when you take somebody You cannot raise people in Scientology and in the Sea Organization and train us in Scientology and then come at us and not think that we're not going to turn it back on you
Right.
when we feel like it, because
Right.
that's the only thing often that works with Scientology is using their own technology, I take all that negative energy that they try to send my way,
Yeah.
and I just push it right back on them and add
Yep.
my own twist to it. So I had to threaten legal action against Scientology, RTC, David Miscavige, all to disqualify Shelby from ever being allowed to step foot at Flag again.
Perfect.
Yeah, it totally
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah, exactly. And then they can just leave you alone, hopefully.
Well, for a little while, honestly, most of the harassment I experienced in Scientology, but I was being vocal. I worked, I don't know if you knew this, I was working for My Talk at the time. I was doing a radio show that was
Yeah,
a
I
pop
did know
culture
you were on a show. I was forbidden to
listen.
watch. I couldn't find anything out. I was forbidden. I must obey.
Mhm.
I didn't want to get in trouble. This is how it is. I must obey.
Exactly. Lupita says high control groups encourage members to give up personal responsibility for the sake of the group's beliefs. Breaks my heart when ex-cult blame themselves. I get what you're saying, Lupita. It's like it's not to blame yourself, Ginger. Like this is Scientology. This is their thing that they did wrong every day, every which way.
Yeah.
And NM says you don't have to be in a cult to be brainwashed, and it takes a while to get over it. I went through a lot of the feelings you guys went through, shame, but that's all I knew. NM, that is so insightful, and you're right. And it is part of what I think sometimes prevents people not just from leaving a cult or a high control group, but from definitely speaking about it. Is that, and that's often what Scientology will try to push that button and make you feel like you are such a piece of crap that you would never, they want to make you so introverted that you're never going to speak out and talk about it. Or they want to threaten you with exposing things that you've divulged in your confidential auditing sessions. And when I left, I sat down and I made a list of everything I thought they might try to blackmail me with emotionally or otherwise. I was writing a column for a local publication at the time. I started writing and talking about all of it. I'm like, oh, you think you're going to embarrass me, Scientology? I'm talking about that myself.
Right.
I'm not
Well, yeah,
embarrassed
that
by it.
neutralized them,
Yes.
And you're absolutely right. Using their own language on them works too. Like saying, I'm a I'm a Thetan. I'm a self-determined being. I've decided not to participate in this group anymore.
Yeah.
I have notified you that I do not want to be in this group anymore. You
And
have
they
to
don't know
respect
it's
that. Like I've done this. I've done the steps. Let's look in the book. Okay. You don't like it because it's on you, but it is still the steps. And then they can't argue with that. So you're absolutely right. Like the tech can't be used on them back, like if you want to. Fortunately, like, I mean, you were public and needed to be public. And I think that's amazing too, because you've helped a lot of people, I'm sure. So gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
well, going public, deciding to share your
Yeah,
story.
that makes you a big target. And I did not want that. I just wanted to be under the radar. As far as I did see that they were like how they acted around the org about you. And yeah, how they were after you basically. And like, not just you, but anybody who could talk to you. So, I mean, I would get asked just randomly if I had any communication with you.
They would just randomly ask you, have you spoken to Natalie?
Yeah, like it was, and that it'd be a problem if you talk to Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
She's an SP, right? She's in trouble for this, that, and the other, right? So like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want any problems. I just want to get through this day and get home to my kids. So I'm just, but yeah, I think, yeah, the brainwashing thing is, it's stronger than you think. And I think because Scientology tells you that they're like not brainwashing you, they are the solution to brainwashing, actually. So you can't be brainwashed.
Yeah, it's very insidious, and it is so interesting. It's like, I guess, people who maybe were in another, well, take the Bible, for example. If you know the Bible really well and you know your Bible verses and the meaning behind it, if someone tried to use the Bible against you, it might be kind of hard to do because you have knowledge about it that you can use. And I
Yes.
feel like it's that way in Scientology. And that's why, too, I think for as much as they push in Scientology, oh, you need to be trained, you need to be hatted, they really go out of their way to make it difficult. And I think part of that is they want to keep Scientologists, especially staff members and Sea Org members, ignorant. They want you to be uneducated. That's
Oh,
why
yeah.
they didn't let us go to school, why they would pull us out of school and tell us working for Scientology was the best thing that we could do. But what they don't count on. Say
All
that
that
again?
training was bullshit.
Yeah. Except,
Reciting to a wall, like what did I really get out of all that training that I could go out into the real world and use for anything? And I spent hours. And they make you spend hours on a freaking tiny little detail like a word. So I mean, they really that's a sick trick.
yeah.
That's probably like only the schools are as good as Scientology at brainwashing. Because they like, seriously, like you'll be reading the same sentence over and over and over again, trying to find your misunderstood.
Yeah.
Going through every dictionary, every resource, trying to find your misunderstood because you don't understand something that was never really written to be understood.
Yeah.
I don't think there are some things that are not written to be understood. They are meant to confuse, and they are meant to keep you spinning in that course room until whatever happens that needs to happen for that needle to float or whatever, that you can just move on to the next thing.
That's so true.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
It's intense. And I think, like you don't realize when you're in it how intense that is. You get away from it and it's like, oh my God, yes, that was really intensive. That was intensive brainwashing, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
That really got me nowhere, but being able to say like, now I like seriously have tried to forget.
Yeah. When I don't blame you. And I'm so glad you got away from that, because what they'll try to do if they think that you'll go public or you'll talk about it is they go as far to try and mentally mess people up before they leave, to try and actually get them to the point of having a mental breakdown. So they're so incapacitated that they can't actually take any action against Scientology. So they want to damage you as much as possible. When they know you're going to leave, that's why they tell you, well, you got to come and leave properly. It gives them the time to mentally mess you up. And that's the key, is to never go back. Although that's easier said than done. It's very complicated, but that's completely their intention, is to try and render you unable to care for yourself, let alone expose Scientology. But what they don't understand, what they don't count on, is there are valid forms of therapy outside of Scientology. There's self-help, there's counseling, there's other religions, there's philosophy
like this.
Yeah. There's art, there's YouTube, there's so many ways for people to break free from that and actually find some healing. And the most dangerous thing, this is my opinion, the most dangerous person to Scientology is a former Scientologist that's done some healing. That is the most dangerous individual to Scientology, because when this is my opinion, when you get to a certain point in your healing, I have found that I've been able to take the Scientology I know, and I can confidently use it against them
Yes.
without it messing me up,
Right.
without it being because I believe it. No. And I can also now, even further, when I first left Scientology, I was just like, you cross me, you get in my way, you touch my family, I will melt you.
Yeah.
And that wasn't healing.
No, but I
I didn't
definitely felt
like
that
it.
way. I definitely felt that way. That's very relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told him that you do realize in the real world this is called kidnapping. Uh, there's a whole world out here that like the laws do apply.
Hmm.
You think they don't, but they do. So I had to make some veiled threats, or maybe
Hmm.
not so veiled threats, but about my kids. Yeah, if
Yeah.
you want me to melt down, it's over. Kids are helpless people.
Yeah, and if they know that those are the buttons that they try to press, but when we go further and when we can actually truly do some healing where we're no longer, it's not coming from a place of hate or I want to destroy you. I do not want to destroy Scientologists. I want the abuse
No, I definitely don't
of Scientology
either.
to
I
end.
really grieved the people that I can never talk to. I have seen people that
Mhm.
I really liked. I've seen them out in public, and I did not approach them.
Mhm.
It is sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And I just
But it's
continue.
easier to not disrupt them or myself and just to stay away
Mhm.
and pray for the best. There are I definitely don't want to attack Scientologists.
Yeah. We can, there's the ideas. And even like I'm like, believe what you want. If you want to believe in Xenu, believe in Xenu. But enforcing disconnection, other practices that are abusive, like no, you don't need to be auditing kids. You don't need kids to be auditing adults. You don't need any of that to have a belief system. NM, thank you so much for the super sticker. That is very kind. Anna from MA, yeah, and David Miscavige made his life's work to be even richer. It's all about the money.
It is. I mean, look at the huge transfer of wealth from the actual people who are Scientologists to the organization in those ideal orgs. Scientology owns that property. The people don't.
Yeah.
Everybody who contributed to that, they will be gone, and Scientology will own that. Like whether they fill it or not, whether they ever use that property for anything or not, Scientology owns your kids' college education that you were forced to. I mean, I say forced. It's a really strong coercion that they were doing on people. That's not right.
Hmm.
Scientology owns people's freaking children's college education,
Hmm.
people's mental health, like that they could have afforded to pay for if they didn't. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
exactly.
they're so shitty if you can't pay anymore, or if you do something that's not good. Like my original friend Greg, who I dated, he when his struggles were something that they didn't want to deal with, and he was cut off from services when he needed help.
When push comes to shove, when people have real, legitimate life things going on, they're the last ones to help. They're the last ones
Because
to
it'd make
help.
the group look bad if you actually had a problem.
Exactly. Like when my mom
It
had her,
doesn't make any sense, Val.
yeah.
I'm just like, what? That
Hmm.
makes no sense.
Yep. When my mom was auditing on operating Thetan level 7, she needed a kidney transplant. That was like shortly before we left. And I gave her a kidney and we got like
I
no
remember that.
help. Yeah. There was like no no help. Like there was your time to shine as a church and step up, but there wasn't any of that. And she had run their operating Thetan committee, which is like PTO for Scientology or PTA, and nobody was hardly there, to help. And here's
No, of
somebody
course
that did
not. It's
all the
not that
things.
kind of church. It's not that kind of church. There was a man who came in one day. He wanted to buy a book. He had the money to buy a book. he had been buying books. This guy was a hobo and he'd been traveling on the rails, and he was dirty and he didn't smell good, but he wanted to buy a book. And I had Sea Org members come screaming to get him out before I could get him his book, because we didn't take people like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess that we're not that kind of church. Even though we had a shower in the basement. Could have offered him like a shower. Like, that was one of those little ones. That was a drop in the bucket for me too, because the way that they were so hateful to that man. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I was like, are you kidding? I got written up for arguing with the Sea Org member over that.
Really? So they wrote a knowledge report on you arguing with a Sea Org member about helping this man.
Yeah. Selling him a book, doing my actual job, but not to the hobo.
Wow. Who wanted
to actually help people? You couldn't actually help people. You can actually like arrange to have some meals brought over when somebody needs it. That's what actual real like churches do. The community gathers around and they help each other. And that's really sad that you didn't get that when you needed it too, because that's a big deal to give up a kidney.
It was part of too. It was such an eye opener in ways. I was never used to getting that kind of help from Scientology because they were just never that way. But it became so obvious. Like I had 3 children at home, and my major supporter was my mother. Well, she was living down the street from me. We both had surgery. We were both at the hospital. I had, my son was still young. And, we worked through it. Like we had our family support and some friends outside of Scientology that helped to step up because, it was
that had to say a lot to you, though. That really had to say a lot to you, that it had to be people from outside the group.
It did. It did. It was the kindness of virtual, practical strangers that really started to open my eyes to, wait a minute, here, is actual need for help. We've done all these things. We've given so much to Scientology, our literal lives at times, and they can't even help out when we're both going through a major surgery. It was just
bring a casserole over or anything. Like, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts. But I think, we're going to continue these conversations. And Ginger, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story and for doing this.
Natalie, thank you for having me on. And to your audience too, for being so nice.
Yeah, you're getting like you're going to have to go back on the replay and watch this and read through the comments. The video will have to process, but then the live stream, you'll be able to go back and read every comment that's popped up, because I didn't even share half of them that are just so, so supportive and whatnot. Like, Jess, you're truly able. If you are truly able, you get up and you get out.
Yes, get out and stay out too.
Yes. So do check that out afterwards. But I do want to thank you and everybody who's here. If you're catching this on the replay, jump in those comments. Also, please hit that like and subscribe as well for more content like this and more. I'd appreciate it. And Ginger, I know now that you and we don't live near each other. I did see one of those comments, but we are already talking about getting together. And because, we live in completely different states now.
But we'll have to talk more for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. No, completely. You hold tight.
And I'll be in the comments. I'll be in the comments on other shows. I've started tuning in too. So yeah, I'll be part of the community. I'm also a subscriber.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I'm so glad. And now you know all these people, and when they see you, because I saw you in the chat in your name.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
will that continue to be your screen name?
Huh?
Will that continue to be the name you use in the chat? Can I give your name?
Yes.
Okay. So you can look for Ginger Hansen and you'll see her in the chat, y'all. So when you see her, give her a shout out. But yes.
I'm blue. My little picture is blue.
Well, thank you so much. Ginger, hold tight. I'm going to log off, but talk to you behind the scenes
On the
here.
other side. Okay.
Yes, on the other side. Everybody else,
Okay.
thank you for being here, and
Thank
thank you for
you,
being so
everyone.
supportive of Ginger. Get out and have that cult-free evening, everybody.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.